So let's do our Refuge and Bodhichitta prayer. So let's so I was just reading today in the Liberation book, actually. And this is a motivation that Lama Zopa Rinpoche uses in his morning, setting up the motivation for your morning practice. So I just thought that maybe we'll just do it for 30 seconds. So let's think how fortunate we are that, we have this opportunity yet again with this human life and the leisure and the fortunes of this human life. Having met gurus, having met the Dharma. So it's very, very rare and precious. And we have finally this life after countless eons of lower rebirths. And if we follow the Dharma, we can avoid falling into lower rebirths again after this life, which is fearful. And if we think about who can help us, guide us to continue to have human lives and to meet our gurus and continue on the path, are the three jewels, the guru and the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So they're our objects of refuge, because they're the only ones who can save us and help us to become enlightened for all beings. So with that motivation, let's do our prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So let's do our meditation. So we'll do a short meditation today. So let's take our comfortable seat. Again, remembering our posture, the sevenfold Vairochana posture, if we remember it. And we just try to set aside the things that came up today, or the lists we still have to do. And we can concentrate on the breath as a way to focus our, make the mind not be scattered. We can think about how kind our gurus are. Just make so much effort to help us, to give us instructions, to guide us when we have trouble. To correct us when we make a mistake. It's like a mother with a child, really, because we are essentially children on this path. And they made so much effort on their own, studying, debating, overcoming obstacles. Being lonely away from their parents in monasteries and so forth and so on when they were children. Sometimes in Lama Zopa's and Lama Yeshe's case, and when they were refugees, they didn't have much to eat. They were sick. Living conditions were very poor. But they overcame all of that, and they continued single-pointed motivation of benefiting others. And they continued on the path. They didn't give up. So that they could be here now with us to help us and help all sentient beings. And help us in the, the help that they provide us is not for this life. It's for all our future lives. So it's the most important help that anyone can give us. It's not just mundane affair for mundane affairs. And if we follow their advice and keep our relationship strong with them, and as it says, like a vajra, you're never wavering. And following their instructions, following their advice, then we surely have we can make continual progress, not just in this life, but in all future lives, because we create the conditions of meeting them over and over again. So we create the conditions for having a human life and the conditions to continue to meet our gurus in the future lives so that they can continue to guide us. And we can do that by relying on the guru in thought, like we discussed last time, where the different analogies they used on how a student should relate to the teacher, like a wise young son, like the earth carrying all the burden, like a servant that carries out his wishes, and and others like that. So like a boat that continually crosses the river tirelessly. So like that, if we continue to serve our teachers, we'll continue to have high rebirths and meet them in future lives. And so let's remember our motivation, that we're here to accumulate merit and wisdom. That's what it's really about. So we're here to accumulate merit and wisdom by speaking, learning, talking about how to relate to spiritual teacher, so that we can be of ultimate benefit to ourselves, of course, but especially to all beings whom we cannot help if we don't reach our ultimate goal. So we dedicate, or not dedicate, so we create the motivation that whatever we do this evening, that we, and this series, that we do, and we have done it, and we do it for the benefit of all beings. And then we can start. Hello, Nina. So this is the last class of the series. But you can watch if you're interested, you can watch the previous, how many classes do we have? 4 or 5. We had to cancel one class, but in any case, yeah, I think 4 other classes. So we're talking about how one, the root of the path, the scriptures say and the lamas say, is devoting oneself to the spiritual teacher. So that's the way to create all the merit and purify our negative, all the obstacles, so that we can gain the maximum, make maximum progress on the path, and the quickest way on the path. So that's what this is about. So let's see. So we have covered so far, what are the 10 qualities, if you remember, of the spiritual teacher, on how to look for a spiritual, what qualities to look for in a spiritual teacher, and only if that teacher meets those qualities, then one considers him a teacher and devotes oneself to him or her. So the 10 qualities of a teacher, the various qualities of a student, right? The 3 or the 6, depending on how you count. And then how to rely on the spiritual teacher in thought, right? Because we talked about, that's what the end of the meditation was about, right? How, like a wise young son, and like a servant, like a dog, like a boat, like, various other, all the analogies. And so today we're going to talk about how to rely in practice, right? So how to rely on thought we covered, how to rely on practice today. And then the benefits of relying on a teacher, right? What are the benefits that we get from relying on a teacher? And interspersed in there, I guess, as it comes up, is what to do if difficulties arise in the relationship with the teacher, right? So how to handle those difficulties. So yeah, any questions from last time, or any other questions? No, everything is clear. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot. The other big topic we covered is how to see the teachers as Buddhas and representative of the Buddhas, right? And why, all the reasons, logical reasons why that can be so, right? So that's I can't believe I forgot that one, but yes. So that's the other big thing we covered, right? So now we're how to rely in practice. And this should all be in your handouts. It's also in your the Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand book, right? And I think it's an, oh geez, depending on what which version you have, this is day, what is it, day 7, I guess, the chapter, you know, the way the chapters are, it's day 7. So it's the chapter in day 7 that's that it talks about this. So how to rely in practice, right? Which means, so there are three ways they say that one can rely in practice. So one can offer make offerings of material, goods or money and so forth and so on. One can talk, one can praise them, to others and so forth and so on, right? And making offerings, what was I'm sorry, not praise them, making offerings, performing services, right? Services for them. And then the last one is following their advice, right? So that's the third way of relying on a spiritual teacher and how to, devoting oneself to a spiritual teacher in practice. So which do you think is the one that they say that the teachers value the most out of making offerings, making offerings, performing services, and following their advice?
Following their advice.
Practice.
Right, following their advice. That's right. And so that's the best way. If we, of course, every other way is also wonderful, but following their advice, they think, because, and we'll talk about that, because following their advice it's like the analogy they use is like, like a mother with a child, right? So when the child follows the mother's advice and does something good, then it really pleases the mother, right? She is very happy with the child, and the bond becomes stronger, right? The child bond between the child and the mother becomes stronger. So and it also makes the Buddhas happy, right? Because the mother is the teacher is the representative of the Buddhas, right? So when the Buddhas see that, it makes them happy as well. So that's anyway. So that's about why that is. But in any case, so how to how to serve them by making offerings. So so you can offer ordinary things, of course, like special objects and statues and money and so forth and so on, or helping their projects, that are important to them. And you can also be, offer them prostrations and so forth and so on, right? Prostrations or bowing but the other thing also is that when you offer them things, they don't have to be just not mundane, but just material things. So for example, it says in the 50th verse of the Guru Devotion, it says, if it is taught that you should be willing to offer things that are normally not given away. This is in thought, of course, such as your children, your spouse, and even your life to the Guru to whom you have pledged solemn vows. Right. So it said, if you do that, what need is there to mention that you should be willing to offer your fleeting wealth? So, of course, you're not giving them your spouse and your life. Well, I mean, in the Buddha, maybe not your spouse and so forth and so on, but in the Jataka tales, in the tales of the Buddha's lives, before his enlightenment, when he was a bodhisattva, there are many stories you can read and about him having offered his life and offered his son, he offered his children, and so forth and so on, for someone's benefit, and so like that. So that's, so one can in thought, so for example, when we do a mandala offering, like, so this is something I do. I don't know if, because I was, taught that one can do this, is when we make a, mandala offering, for example, I think about all the things that in my life that I hold, that is precious to me, right? That is dear to me, right? And, and of course, I visual, like as it says, the advice says, you visualize, skies, skies of offerings, right? Clouds of, skies of, like, sky full of offerings. But including that, I like Rinpoche said, I offer my life, I offer my children, I offer, my wife, like, yeah, in thought, you can, because those are what you're doing is not offering your spouse or whatever, obviously, but what you're doing is you're offering everything that is really dear to us, right? And that's what's important. That's what's special. Because, I mean, we are usually so stingy, right? I mean, that's just a thought of making the offerings makes us, create the conditions for being more generosity. And so it makes a slight dent in our stinginess, So that's the instruction. The mandala offering, for example, where you offer the universe and you offer everything. So that includes your life and so forth and so on. So it says, giving to your teacher is equivalent to continually making offerings to all the Buddhas. From such offerings, you acquire the accumulation of merit. And from this accumulation, the supreme attainment is reached. So, the two great accumulations are accumulation of merit and accumulation of wisdom, right? So, all our, realizations in meditation and, and so forth and so on come from the accumulation of wisdom, right? But all the excellent qualities, of gaining enlightenment, right? Like when you get enlightenment, your Buddhas have their pure lands, right? You create your own pure land. You can emanate countless, you can create countless emanations to help sentient beings. If you're a bodhisattva, for example, the 32 marks and major and minor marks of a Buddha and so forth and so on. So all those are, so our attainment of our ultimate goal is through accumulation of merit, right? So what that means is all our spiritual progress really, the creating the conditions to continue to make progress is through our accumulation of merit. It's like that. It's like that, the example they use of the seed. The seed has the potential to grow, right? All seeds do. But, even if the seed doesn't grow up by itself, right? You have to plant the seed. And that's just not even that is enough, right? So the farmer, when he plants a seed, he puts fertilizer on the soil, he tills it, to get rid of all the weeds and so forth and so on. Then he plants the seed, then he waters it, then the sun has to be there and the rain has to come. All those conditions have to be there for the seed to sprout, right? So the fertile soil is the accumulation of merit. Without it, the seed is not going to grow. Right, the fertile soil and the rain and all that stuff is like the accumulation of merit. And tilling the soil is the purification that one does, right? Purifying the obstacles. So that's the kind of example they give. So that's why, all our, the fact that we have a human life in this life is through accumulation of merit, right? And that's just a basic requirement. One has to have the precious human rebirth, with having met the teachers and met the Dharma and all those, the 10, the leisure and the fortune. Those all happen through accumulation of merit. And if one wants to continue on this path, that's how it's going to happen, is through accumulation of merit. And once we have a human life, when we, whatever realizations we gain and so forth and so on, that's through accumulation of wisdom, right? So the Buddha, making offerings to our teachers is the ultimate, is the best way of accumulation of merit. And the reason is that, and this is in the karma section as well, that, when one makes offerings or one creates actions, whether positive or negative, one of the parameters or one of the I guess how much merit you create is, of course, like what action you're doing and what the motivation is and all this other stuff, but also the object, right? The person or to whom the action is made, right? And depending on depending on the person's field of merit, the action has greater greater result, or so for example, if we make offerings to a ordinary person, we create a lot of merit. That is definitely the case. If we make offerings to a monastic, it's a higher field of merit because they live in ethical discipline and so forth and so on, so they have a higher field of merit. So it creates greater, same action but creates greater merit. If you give same offerings to a bodhisattva, again, greater merit. Same offerings to the Buddhas, again, much, much greater merit. But if you make the same offerings to the guru, it says it says somewhere, it's like making offerings to all the Buddhas for countless eons, right? And so that's why it's just, such an easy way to accumulate merit is to make offerings to our gurus, offerings of ordinary offerings, of course, like of possessions. I mean, like, as I said, statues and so forth and so on, making, or offering, money for their projects and so forth and so on. But also, offerings in thought, right? Like, giving our, offering them our life and so forth and so on when we do the Mandala Offering, right? So it's easy. Or when we make food offering prayer, that's another easy way to create, merit, just to think, that we are making an offering to the guru, and that whatever food that we're giving them is not just ordinary food, but rather like nectar, right? So that's the kind of the idea behind the, when we do the prayer, Lama Sangye Lama Che, that prayer, right? The food, the offering prayer. So that's it. So that's what, it's easy to make offerings, really, and they make it. That's the nice thing about it. Tibetan Buddhism or Buddhism in general, they really make it easy for us. It's just a matter of us doing it. I mean, it's not like we have to do so. It's, if we just keep, it's like, it's like everything else. It's like going to the gym or whatever. If you like, go once in a while and you lift like tons and tons of weights, yeah, maybe you make some benefit. I don't know, right? But it's like a little bit every single day just has much more result, greater result, right? And that's the thing that I don't remember, and we all have problems with, right? Is that it's really easy. We just have to do it, like just think about it, be mindful of it, and just do it, right? And as often as we can. And so, yeah. Yeah, so this says the greatest amount of and best kind of merit is accumulated from actions directed towards Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Sangha, and so forth and so on. but making offerings to the guru is has much greater result. So first you will experience the temporary results, which means while you remain in samsara, you will experience good results that are the same type of the kindness, that same type as the action of the kindness you performed. So for example, like they say, how karma works, right? The result according to the cause, result according to the action, and the result accordance with the what will happen to you is the cause is the action that you did earlier, and the environment in which you were born and so forth and so on is also like the action that you perform. So in this case, it's talking about, if you, for example, if you are generous, if you practice generosity, then the result that is the same type of the action is you will have wealth, right? You will have enough sustenance and so forth and so on, right? If you are patient, for example, then you are attractive. That's right. You have like a nice features and so forth and so on, right? So like that, right? So that's all in the karma section. But so you have the, so first you will experience the temporary results. So those are temporary results. But then you also have the highest results, experience of a Buddha field where everything will be perfect inside and out, right? So that's like being, like when the Buddha creates his own Pure Land. So then, so I talked about the spiritual teacher being a representative of the Buddhas and so forth and so on. And the merit, of course, increases more and more, right? So every little bit of merit that we create, like karma, right? If you remember how karma grows, right? It's like a tree, growing from a seed, right? A tiny little seed, a little action, but if it's ripening over many, many eons, it becomes this giant oak tree or whatever, right? So like that, a little action towards our gurus even now will become, causes it causes for, gaining, a pure rebirth and so forth and so on. Like, there's stories and in the like for example that, when the Buddha on the morning after his enlightenment, right? Remember, he stayed under the Bodhi tree all night, and the morning after, he was very hungry, and he was a skeleton by then, right? Skin and bones. And there was a girl, what was her name? I can't remember her name now. But anyway, there was a girl who was, depending on the story, carrying milk or carrying water from the river. But she offered a bowl of milk to the Buddha, right? Because he was under the tree and he needed some food. And that was the cause for her, being able to go to the realm of the 33, I think, Tushita Pure Land, and so forth and so on, to get teachings directly from the Buddhas. So like that, right? Just those one tiny little action to a great pure field of merit, high field of merit, and it grows, right? So it becomes this amazing result. Of course, one thing to remember is that when we make offerings of things, of objects, or of wealth or whatever, it's important that whatever we give them is of the best quality. And what, it's not like, like sometimes, I remember, okay, here's an example. So I remember this, like a long time ago, this was like 10, 15 years ago, I was making, water bowl offerings, right? And I realized that I was getting the water bowl offerings from a tap of water, but I was drinking filtered water, right? I'm like, what the hell am I thinking? Right? If I'm not going to drink the tap water, because there was some problem with the pipe at the time. And normally I drink tap water, but there was some problem with the pipe. And at the time we had to get filtered water. But anyway, so if I'm not going to drink the tap water, I'm offering it to the Buddhas, right? I mean, that's just dumb. So like that, you know, we're stingy. I mean, that's just how we are, you know, how I am. And so, you know, sometimes, you know, we'll give like we'll think, oh yeah, I can offer that because I don't need it, right? I mean, you know, I'll get, you know, or, you know, like, let's say you have, you know, you got 5 or 6 statues from some, you know, from wherever, and you find that one, you know, like there's 1 or 2 that you don't like, and so you make that offering, you know, so those kinds of things. So it's really what we want to offer is of the best quality and what we would want to have, right? What we would hold most dear, or what would hold most, you know, most value. So that's important to remember. And of course, needless to say that whatever we offering has to be, you know, gained in a you know, in an ethical way, right? So, you know, if we steals a tanka and give it to the guru, I'm not sure that's going to go very far. So then the second way of making offerings is to honor and perform services. Honor, mean praise them and so forth and so on, and perform services for them, right? So, you know, this is like, you know, that it talks about like, you know, like for example, if, you know, if you're helping, you know, Geshe-la or whatever, he's having trouble, you know, taking him to the doctor or whatever, you know, anything like that, right? Or in the old days, you know, you'd bathe them and so forth and so on, you know, that your teacher, and especially if he was old. And there's stories about Atisha, for example, his disciple Dromton, you know, when Atisha was really old, and he couldn't even, you know, like, you know, basically was bedridden, you know. And so Dromtonpa was clean his stained sheets, you know, and all that, you know. So it was, you know, that kind of, you know, that has great, you know, of course, you know, we do that for our, you know, like when, you know, for our parents, or, you know, like, for example, when they get really old and infirm, and, you know, like my mother, you know, and so, you know, there are things like that we do. But, you know, you know, it has merit, of course, but doing it for a guru is just amazing, you know, just nothing, you know, like that, you know. So offering services to them, nursing them when they're ill and so forth, and also praising their good qualities to other students, you know, because what one is doing is that, you know, basically bringing the Dharma to certainly to other students, but also, you know, it's like praising the Buddhas, right? You know, like we pray because it creates a devotion in our mind stream, right? Remember, all of this is about us, right? It's nothing to do with the guru, right? I mean, this is all from our own side. It's not going to make any difference to the guru. Yeah, any difference to the guru, whether or not we praise them, whether we make offerings to them. If they have those 10 qualities we talked about, right? You know, they've gained wisdom, and they've have, have direct perception of emptiness. None of this is going to matter to them. You know, whether you give them a like the horrible most statue and ugliest, whatever it is, none of that is going to matter, right, to him or her. It's really from our own side. It's whether or not it creates the softness in our mind and more, in a kind of the fertileness in our heart, right, for our progress to happen. Yes, Skylar.
I think I kind of answered my own question, but just to double check, because I was told in a different tradition that all of your happiness comes from the blessings of the guru. And if you don't receive blessings from the guru, then you will never be happy. But to me, that would almost be like the guru's kind of overriding karma. And I mean, can a guru do that? Can they?
Right. No, I mean, okay, that is correct. I mean, what the you know, so all our happiness meaning all our you know, freedom from samsara, liberation, and so forth and so on, right? Comes from accumulation of merit. That's what it means by happiness here, right? The happiness is not the ordinary happiness of this life, right? Like wealth and beauty and, you know, good relationships and so forth and so on. But it's really the happiness, ultimate happiness, right? Of liberation and enlightenment, right? So that comes from the accumulation of merit. And the greatest way of accumulating merit is devoting oneself to the guru, right? So that's how all our happiness comes from the guru, from the blessings of the guru, yes. And the Buddhas, of course, because the gurus, we consider the gurus, if not Buddhas, then certainly representatives of the Buddhas.
But on the reverse side, could they, I guess, maybe like, the only word I can think of is like curse you. So like instead of giving you blessings, they give you sadness? Or is it?
Well, no, I mean, they can't, well, no other being, person or otherwise, can curse you or whatever, create your bad karma, right? It's our mind stream that creates our own karma, right? So, okay. So what would, and we'll talk about that, but I can speak to it a little bit here, is just like devoting oneself, you know, to the guru is the best way to accumulate merit. When we do have downfalls towards, the opposite is also true. When we have downfalls towards the guru, like if we, you know, if we are criticizing them, or if we are, you know, whatever, you know, so if there's downfalls to the guru's relationship to the guru, then it also creates a great, you know, much greater demerit, right? Negative karma, right?
Because it's our intention, like
that's right. It's our intention. That the motivation, right? Is the, and of course the field of merit. Remember, it's so the karma has, you know, there's four. Well, when you study karma, you'll find that there's four things that completes an karma, creates complete karma of an action, right? And one of those is the action itself. The motivation itself, and another one is the field of merit, right? So a positive action to a high field of merit has a much greater, you know, positive result. But the opposite is also true. A negative action towards a high field of merit also creates a huge amount of negative, you know. But it's the motivation and the field of merit that has a big, you know, has great impact.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's why maybe we'll talk about this here. So that's why it's important to, so, you know, so sometimes, and I've had this as well, sometimes we you know, we find that that a teacher is, what's the word I'm looking for? That maybe it's no longer the conditions for us to follow that teacher is no longer there. Let me put it that way, for whatever reason, right? From the teacher's side or from our side or whatever it is, right? So the best way, they say, is to just, you know, there's no reason to criticize the teacher. There's no reason to, you know, badmouth them to other people. There's no reason to think badly of the teacher, of the guru. If we've taken him as a guru, when I say teacher here, I mean like when we have taken him or her as a guru, right? There's no reason to think poorly of the teacher, because remember, that is, you know, that is has negative consequences, right? So, but what we do is we slowly and carefully, we just extricate ourselves or remove ourselves from the teacher. It's like, it's like a neutral action in a way, right? So, I mean, we still follow whatever teachings they gave that are correct, right? That are relevant, that are correct, and so forth and so on, right? There's, it's not like we just say, okay, everything that the teacher told me is now no longer valid, right? So we still follow the, whatever still is correct, we follow, right? But we don't necessarily stay in that closeness that we may have had earlier. And that's the best way to solve that problem, if you will, if that problem arises. And, I've had to do that once. And, so, I still I don't consider that person to be a bad person, I just, they still had other students, and hopefully he, helped them and they made progress, but it was no longer working for me, right? There were things that that didn't feel right for me. And so I just said, okay, well, it's best to move on. And, I still have his books and, so forth and so on. And I still once in a while will think of him, but I don't think poorly of him. I don't think anything, like that, right? I don't talk to him, like I'm not mentioning his name to you, right? I don't talk to him to other people. I've talked to him with a couple of friends who are very close Dharma friends who understand the contexts and understand, so that it's not criticizing the teacher to them, right? I'm talking about my relationship with the teacher with them, not, so they understand that. So I'm not creating negative action, right? By talking about my teacher to them, because the context is not like one of like where I'm talking in public, like if I were talking to you about the teacher, right? So one can talk to Dharma friends, close Dharma friends who understand and who one can trust, and, because one has to process sometimes, right? Like what to do and how to think about it and so forth and so on. And then, one finds, I found Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and, and the rest is history, right? So, but my first teacher was still of great benefit to me, his book was very helpful for me. And so, yeah, so like that, right? So, so there's, so that's the best way to do it. Yes, Nancy.
So what you're saying is that you have a teacher and you benefited from teachings. And so if whatever happens that you realize this is not the right path or this right teacher, if there were improprieties or something, it doesn't negate the teachings. The teachings could still be very valid, even if you have to move on from that teacher. Is that what you're saying?
Right, that's right. Because, I mean, obviously, if the teachings he gave were not, that's one of the things we talked about in how to choose a teacher and follow a teacher. If the teachings were not in accord with the Dharma of the scriptures or what the Buddha taught or what you read in the Liberation book or whatever it is, then one should not follow those teachings, right? It's like that bit of being the wise young son, right? Yes, we are young, but we are also wise, right? We can discriminate, right? So we follow only the teachings that are valid. And so, most, almost all, or actually all the teachings that my teacher gave were valid. And so, I follow those things, right? But there were circumstances arose that because of which I needed to remove myself. And so I did. And, it's okay. There is still some karmic connection. And maybe I'll meet him again in another life. I don't know, right? But there's no reason to think badly. And that's, I think, the best way to do it, and that's what they suggest. If it's so, that's with a teacher who in the sutra tradition, right? If you've taken initiations from that teacher, by the way, Nancy, you said that if you have a teacher and who has helped you, right? So that's a prerequisite, right? I'm just making, if a teacher if someone hasn't helped you, he's not going to be your teacher anyway. That's one of the prerequisites before one takes on someone as a teacher. So anyway, so yeah, so you follow that advice that is valid and still works. So that's in the sutra tradition, which is true for most people. But if you've had tantric initiation, and specifically highest yoga tantra initiation from a teacher, right? Because if you are taking initiation from a teacher or precepts even, right? Like refuge vows, or even precepts like on a holy day, for example, if you take precept from a particular, the first time you take right? Remember, on a holy day, you can renew your precepts by yourself. You don't need a teacher for that. But the first transmission you get of the precepts, he or she becomes a teacher, becomes a guru, right? So that's still on the sutra tradition. But in the tantra tradition, with the highest yoga tantra, that is a very different, it has just much greater, just like it has much greater potential for growth, right? To follow a teacher in the tantra. Removing oneself from a teacher who has given tantric initiation is much more difficult, right? And that's why one should be careful. In general, one should be careful about who one chooses as a teacher, but especially when someone, if you are considering taking an initiation, highest yoga tantra initiation from them, right? Because what the prerequisite for highest yoga tantra initiation is seeing that teacher is inseparable from Vajradhara, the primordial Buddha, right? Because he initiates you into the deities, pure, with mandala and so forth and so on, right? So he arises as the deity and so it's just a much more, the gravity of the relationships is much greater. So for tantra, if you've had tantric initiation, I'll just say that the best thing to do probably is continue practicing the tantra, of course, because one has made commitments, right? Usually highest yoga tantra initiations come with commitments, right? So one shouldn't break the vows of the commitments. So you continue to make the commitments, meet the commitments, and you still have the teacher as your guru, right? The teacher is still your guru, but maybe you don't have to continue to go to their teaching. Again, separate oneself, right? You certainly don't take further initiations from that teacher, right? Because if you've separated yourself, you wouldn't want to create stronger connection. But depending on the tantra, and this is where I would suggest if any of you in this box, the set of boxes that I see, or if someone's listening to this or watching this on YouTube or whatever, then my suggestion would be to talk to an accomplished teacher, like Geshe-la, for example, or other monks and nuns in the tradition, or write a letter to Lama Zopa Rinpoche and ask what his advice is, right? That's the best thing to do in the tantra tradition, because I'm certainly I'm not qualified to give advice on tantric stuff, but I'm just saying that in general, that's the advice that's given, a general advice. Then if you ask advice from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he might have specific advice for you, for one. I mean by you, I mean for anybody. He might have specific advice for you, but the general advice is to basically continue to meet the commitments, continue to do the visualizations, and the general, the visualizations. Remember, in the visualization of a deity, one has to see the teacher who gave the initiation as inseparable from the deity. So you still have to see the teacher as inseparable from the deity, and so forth and so on. But find a way to keep that commitment without by still being honest, right? Whatever that means. And so that's kind of how, and of course, then one has separated oneself physically and whatever, and connection wise, right? You still have a connection through the deity, but you don't have a connection, what's the word I'm looking for? In this life, if you will, right? The ordinary connection or whatever, getting teachings and so forth and so on from that teacher, right? Anyway, so that's kind of one of the things that that I normally cover in this module, and most teachers do, is what to do if a teacher doesn't, if one needs to separate oneself from the teacher. So, okay. So we were talking about, when we digressed, we were talking about performing various services to a teacher and praising them and so forth and so on, right? And the third and best way to repay the kindness is through our practice, right? Which basically means following their advice. Whatever, they might have given us, like water bowl, certain number of water bowl offerings to do, or certain, nundro practices, they're called, preliminary practices that are used to help purify our obstacle and accumulate merit so that we can make progress, right? So there's 5 or 6, depending on, I can never remember, it's 5 or 6 in this tradition, nundro practices, for example, making water bowl offerings, making prostrations, to the 35 Buddhas, and so forth and so on. And, making satsas and, the little statues, that's what satsas are, statues of the statues are from a mold of the Buddhas and so forth and so on. So like that. So those are nundro practices. And so our teachers may have given, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for example, has given me many, shall we say, prostrations and water bowl offerings to do. So I do them every morning, and, but I probably won't, it's going to take a retreat to do all the water bowl offerings. Water bowl offerings take time, right? Prostrations take a lot of time too, but water bowl offerings, you have to I can crank out prostrations, but water bowl offerings, it's just a lot more effort, take time. So I'll probably have to do a separate retreat for water bowl offerings, to make up all the to get a good number in. But just as an aside, the fun, again, this is in the category of, they just make it as easy as possible for us. The fun thing about the water bowl offerings, the tidbit to know, is that unlike the other ones, on the other, prostration and so forth and so on, unlike the other ones, water bowl offerings, let's say you have to make 1,000 water bowl offerings, right? So you go to the center or whatever, and you make, you're doing 100 water bowl offerings a day, let's say, right? But if you have somebody else there who's also making 100 water bowl offerings every day, right? So let's say you guys share, you do 50 water bowl offerings and he does another 50, you get the merit for all 100. This is true. I am not making this up. When I first heard this, I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense, but that is what it is. So this is an easy way to really, take shortcuts, and some people, and many people have, and it's fine. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, yeah, you in action, you've only done 50, like you've poured 50 water into 50 water bowls. That is true. But in your thought, you're offering 100 water bowls, right? You're offering yours and everybody else's. So to make my water bowl offering commitment, I tried at Vajrapani when I was SPC there to try to see if I could get 3 or 4 or 5 people to do it with me. You know, that way all of us can get the benefit for everybody else, right? But people weren't interested, so I didn't make much progress. So anyway, okay. So so following their advice, and as I said, that's the best way to make an offering. That's what pleases the teachers the most, because they make so much effort to help us, right? And if it's just going in one ear and out the other, then and we're not making any progress, then their whole effort is really for our benefit, right? So our making progress and by following their advice is the greatest offering we can make to them. It's what pleases them the most. And it's also what pleases the Buddhas the most, because they see our effort and our progress and so forth and so on, and our the motivation that we're doing it because we want to, we're making this progress so we can benefit others. So that's the highest way of making as His Holiness says, the best way to make our life meaningful, right? And Rinpoche says that too. He actually has a book called How to Make Life Meaningful, I think. But anyway, so that's why making the offering of practice is so beneficial. But again, it says you should be, so this only is for advice that concords with the teachings, right? With the Dharma. So, so again, we have to be able to discriminate. If the advice, not negative advice, incorrect advice that he or she gives, we do not have to follow. And just like the Buddha said, he said, when you listen to my words, you have to examine them, right? So whatever advice we get from our teachers, we also, of course, have to examine them. And if we have chosen our teacher well, then chances are we'll never have to worry about it too much, but we still should examine it, right?
Shankha, there's a question in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do we know if we're making progress? Oh, are there signs? Yes, indeed. Well, one easy way to tell if one is making progress is just to examine oneself. Am I kinder? Am I more patient? Am I less prone to anger? Is my speech, am I more careful? Am I more mindful about what I say or do? Right? So that's an easy kind of way, right? So if I look back on my life, I'm certain I can say, yes, all of those things are true over the last number of years. So that's one way to tell one is making progress. Another way to tell one is making progress is, well, in the spiritual, so another way is like, certain practices, like for example, if you're doing certain meditations or whatever, are you gaining some realizations, right? So that's another way. That's kind of like, meditation wise progress, right? So by gaining realizations, I mean, let's say, the fact that we have a fortunate rebirth, right? I mean, that's one of the foundational topics, right, in the Lam Rim. That's like after Guru devotion, that's the next thing that we talk that they talk about, right, in the Lam Rim. So, do we have not just an intellectual understanding of that, but do we really feel it in our heart, right? Is our life is our life, the way we act different because of that realization, right? That's how we know that we have gained that realization. Or like, for example, Guru devotion, they, like as one of the as it says in the scriptures is, like, you have Guru devotion when you think of your Guru, like tears come down your eyes, right? Because of his kindness, I can't say that happens to me, but I do know that there is a softness in my heart, right? For the Guru, for Rinpoche and my other Guru, other teachers, a few other teachers that I have. And so when I think of them, I do have a feeling arise about their kindness, how grateful I am for their kindness, and I want to help, I want to make them happy, right? So I know I'm making a little bit of progress, right? So that's another way to tell if one is making progress or not. Is it getting easier to, like, on the path, like as you're studying the Lam Rim, as you're studying other things, and you're doing, if you're doing retreats and things like that, are things getting easier? Things coming easier to you, right? Because remember, accumulation of merit and purifying obstacles, right? So that's the basic thing that we have to do to make progress in anything. I mean, regardless of the spiritual path, right? Anything, whether if we want to have wealth, or if we want to have beauty, or if we want to have good relationships, whatever it is, we have to still have accumulate merit and and remove obstacles, but especially on the spiritual path. And so as we accumulate merit and remove obstacles through our changing our minds and following the teacher's advice and so forth and so on, things that do get easier. Things that used to be difficult become easier. So that's another way to tell. So like that, of course, they say also that when obstacles become stronger, that also means that you're making progress, because it is true that when you are practicing, with great effort, obstacles will also arise. Great obstacles will arise, like sickness and mental obstacles or relationship, or whatever obstacles, or, like that. And the reason is because through our practice and following the Guru, we are actually purifying our negative karma, right? So what they say is that previous karma that we've created, which would have, let's say, taken us to the lower rebirth, like the hell realm, the next rebirth, right? Because we've been purifying and accumulating merit, the karma, the resulting whatever, lower rebirth, for example, gets purified into a less hard, less grave result. And the less grave result could be an illness, right? So a lot of times, Rinpoche will say, for example, be happy that you're ill, because that means that there is some probably negative karma that was really bad that actually is now manifesting as just a short illness, right? Because of the purification and stuff. I mean, remember, the karma doesn't go away, right? There's still going to be some remnant. But as we do more accumulation of merit and purifying obstacles, or purifying negative merit, negative karma, those get smaller and smaller. Until we, of course, reach the, when we become an Arya being, for example, like when we have a direct, direct perception of emptiness, then we no longer create karma, right? We no longer create any new karma, but we still have the old karma. Right? That's why the bodhisattvas that's why after you still have direct perception emptiness, you have the path of seeing, and then there's 10 levels of 10 levels in the path of seeing and path of meditation, which you have to continue to work through for eons and eons, or hopefully if you're practicing High Yoga Tantra, not too many lifetimes, but you have to purify all that old karma, even though you're not creating a new one. You have to create all that old, the obscurations, right? So you don't have any gross delusions anymore, but you still have those subtle obscurations still in your mind stream, and you have to purify those. So that's, anyway, sorry, I got sidetracked. But bottom line is that as you make progress, you will have obstacles that come up. Because through the power of your practice, your purification is getting stronger. And so big negative karma is getting, less potent. And so they manifest as, obstacles in this lifetime. So for example, yeah, so anyway, but of course, as you can tell, it's hard to tell whether or not an obstacle is happening because you're making progress, or obstacle is happening just because, well, you just haven't purified it, right? That takes a clairvoyant person, right? A being. And then you have to send a message to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You have to send a letter to Lama Zopa Rinpoche saying, this obstacle is arising. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And what do I do? And he will tell you what to do, And especially if this happens in retreat. So if you're and this has happened to me too, if you're a long retreat or whatever, obstacles will arise, mental obstacles, emotional obstacles will arise. Not so much, for me, physical obstacles wasn't that big of a deal, but mental obstacles and, all those arise. And it either gets to an extent where you have to stop your retreat. You have to have the discrimination, know when to stop. They have instruction for that. Or you continue and you work through the obstacle, right? Knowing that it's just an obstacle. It's not, you don't. So anyway, so like that. But you need a clairvoyant person a lot of times to be able to tell you whether or not, what to deal with, how to deal with an obstacle. Yes, Steve, you had a question?
Well, you kind of answered it, Shankha. I think, one of the things that is a little difficult, but it seems like when you talked about, are you making progress? It seems like a lot of times, you look at little things, like you mentioned patience. I used to get really frustrated and angry if I get behind a slow moving car on my street and I'm running late for work. And little things like that, like I noticed, well, I don't have that tension in my body quite as much. So, I attribute that to, being on this path. And again, it's not a major step. It's not like,
Every little bit counts.
I've experienced firsthand emptiness, but it's like the little things like that is what I'm, and getting encouragement from that.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, and they have a snowball. It's kind of like interest, how interest, compounding interest, or, it kind of compounds, and it's much, has much greater compound, yeah. So like that, all this stuff also snowballs, has a snowballing effect, right? So these small things accumulate, like as we purify and accumulate merit, the small things like that we think of as small, like, not getting angry at the back, the wheel of a car, those things, of course, we still make progress on, but then other bigger things than we notice, right? Bigger things that we're making progress on, like relationships that we had old patterns that that we've been stuck in forever. Like, I'll give you an example. So one of the greatest accomplishments I consider in my life so far is that I had a strained relationship with both of my parents. At the end of their life, that we had a relation where we repaired the relationship, right? And I wouldn't have been able to do that if it hadn't been for Rinpoche's advice and studying the Dharma. I can guarantee you that, right? Because many times, talking to my mother over the phone, I was doing my mantras and and doing the Tonglen practice. I seriously, Tonglen practice and all that. If I hadn't done that, it would never, you know, I mean, I think, you know, I think she would have died and I would have had a lot of regret. And same with my father. So like that, you know, those kind of, you know, so that those are bigger things, right? So I'm just giving an example of things that I know I was better at because of the Dharma, right? Because of the gurus, because of following their advice. The other way, and I will stop there about this particular topic, Elizabeth, is that one knows as one making progress, is they say that one has auspicious dreams. So like, for example, if you have a dream about your teacher, or if you have a dream like a white deer, I can't remember, there are signs, okay? And for various things, there are lots of signs, you know, and your teacher can tell you what those signs are if you are on a particular, doing a particular retreat, for example, and they will tell you, look for this sign, you know, this kind of dream or that kind of thing happening, or vision appearing, and so forth and so on, right? So that's another way one knows one is making progress. So again, that's the beauty of having a teacher, having a guru, right? They tell you because they know, they've done it themselves, and so they know how to do it, right? Otherwise, we're just shooting in the dark, right? I mean, if you think about it, the billions and billions of people in this world, and us too, until we met the Dharma, you know, we're just kind of just shooting. It's like throwing darts at a dartboard, right? We just hope it works out. That's all we know, you know. We just hope that whatever we're doing, something happens. But if we have a guru and you know, it's amazing. I mean, you know, it's like what an amazing just good fortune, you know, to be able to rely on someone, you know, and that one can trust. And, you know, and one knows that they're not going to judge you no matter what. One could have done the most heinous thing possible. They're not going to judge. All they care about is our own, you know, just to help us, you know, and that they, you know, and like Rinpoche, for example, you know, who has clairvoyance, who can guide us and make, you know, who can ask questions about, you know, when there are pivotal points in our life, you know, we can ask for advice and he will give us advice, and we know, and if we trust the guru, it actually does turn out okay. I've had a couple of instances of that in my lifetime, you know, that I'm not sure what I would have done if it hadn't been for his advice. So, you know, I could easily, and I probably would have taken, and I know there's certain options that I had, if I'd taken, like that I was considering, would have ended up, now looking back on it, I know would have ended up badly, you know, but having followed his advice, it actually came out well. I mean, I would never have thought that it would have done, that would have happened, that it could possibly have happened, seriously. So, you know, like that. So it's an amazing thing to be able to have met a guru and know someone we can trust. Oh yes, someone asked a question, I think. Thank you, Shankha. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I'm glad it helped. What if your much loved mala suddenly explodes into the sidewalk one fine morning? Well, you know, it could mean something huge or it could mean absolutely nothing. Most likely the latter. You know, yeah, I'm not sure I can tell you. That's the short answer. Whom can one ask about interpreting a particular dream? Well, that you can ask Geshe-la, certainly. And if he can answer, then he would tell you. If not, then you know, one asks someone, especially someone, Geshe-la might have clairvoyance. I don't know, but I know certainly Rinpoche has clairvoyance. So one can write to Rinpoche. And you know, so yeah, that's who one asks to interpret a dream. And I've done it myself as well. So, and he didn't answer, which meant that there's nothing to interpret, you know. Well, he answered, but he didn't answer that question. So I know that means that there wasn't that much to interpret in that dream, you know. He just answered my other question, but just left that one blank, you know. So I know that if it had been important, he would have answered it. So yeah, there you go. Okay, 825. So benefits. Okay, so I'll just so the only other bit that I needed to cover was the benefits of relying on a teacher, and most all of which we have already talked about, but it's good to kind of see it in one kind of one topic under the one heading, if you will, so remind ourselves. So the first one is we get closer to attaining the state of a Buddha, right? Why? Because we number one are again accumulating so much merit and purifying obstacles, which is one of the biggest things stopping us from attaining the Buddhahood. Number two, because of our devotion, things get quicker. We gain realizations much more quickly, right? And we please the Buddhas, we please the gurus, we gain their blessings, and so forth and so on, right? And just our power of our practice that gets stronger and stronger. Obstacles get easier to overcome, that kind of thing, right? I mean, just so yeah. Stop me anywhere if you have questions, of course. So it brings us closer to Buddhahood. So that's number one. Number two, it pleases all the Buddhas. And the same reason, like just the mother, child pleases the mother if he follows the instructions, right? Because most of the time we're like the child, most of the time we're naughty, right? I mean, let's think about it, right? I mean, our minds most of the time are not engaged in positive thoughts, right? I'm assuming most of those of us on this Zoom are not doing negative actions, really. I mean, we're probably, if we're here, we're probably not really, maybe we do like some gossiping and things like that, but not serious. Although gossiping is actually one of the most serious negative action because of create the most, I shouldn't have used gossiping as it, but killing, we don't kill, most likely we don't kill, we don't commit sexual misconduct and so forth and so on, right? So yeah, but I don't want to get sidetracked, but why gossiping is one of the most creates most negative karma. But anyway, you have to take the karma class on that one. So that maybe that's a teaser. Okay. And of course, like the mother, and then of course, it pleases all the Buddhas because remember the teachers, if not teacher is a Buddha. We view him or her as a Buddha, but also certainly the teachers are representative of the Buddhas, right? And we talked about why the teacher is a representative of the Buddhas. So as somewhere I read that's like an ambassador, like when a country sends an ambassador to another country, if that ambassador is treated well, that pleases the home country, right? So it's kind of like that. The teacher is the ambassador of the Buddhas, right? In future rebirths, you will be in an environment in which it will be easy to meet proper gurus, receive good teachings, and develop a close relationship with a spiritual teacher again. Right? So that's another big, maybe one of the most important benefits of relying on a spiritual teacher, right? Because without meeting the Dharma and without having a human life and without meeting another teacher, we're not going to make progress, right? So, but if we rely on, devote oneself to a teacher in this life, then we create and it causes us for all those things in the next life, right? Fourth benefit is we will not fall into lower realms, right? Because remember one of the well, anyway, I can't remember now, but we won't fall into the lower realms because we will most likely not create so much negative karma because we're following his advice. We won't kill, we will be very mindful of our actions, certainly. that's another way one knows whether one is making progress. Are we more mindful of what we are doing and thinking and so forth and so on, right? That's a very good way of knowing whether we're making progress. So, we're mindful of our actions. And if we're mindful of our actions, of body, speech, and mind, we are mindful. That means that we're not creating so much negative karma. I mean, certainly grave negative karma. Maybe we're still creating negative karma because, we don't have pure motivation, right? Because we don't have direct perception of emptiness, right? That's what creates pure motivation. Until then, we're still creating some negative karma with every action, but it's not the kind of grave karma that will cause us to fall into low rebirth. So we'll continue to have human lives, right? And hopefully, again, meet teachers and so forth and so on. So and then the fifth benefit is it becomes difficult to be overcome by negative karma, which same reason as why we won't fall into low rebirths, because we will not have strong mental afflictions such as anger, attachment, and ignorance, right? So remember, those are the three main. Ignorance here being the not having having the wrong view, right? Wrong view of reality. But there's three poisons, or the three poisons. The six poisons are those three: attachment, anger, ignorance, jealousy, pride, and then wrong view, right? So those are the six. Wrong view here, the wrong view in that six, meaning not believing in karma, not believing in future rebirths, and those kind of, or not believing that the Buddha is, so the Buddha is a high being and so forth and so on, right? So those are like wrong views. So we won't. So those are create anger, attachment, ignorance, pride, jealousy, wrong view. Those are they create grave negative merits, right? So we won't do those things. So we will not be overcome by negative karma. It becomes difficult to be overcome by negative karma. And then I don't know why it's a repeat, I guess, but the sixth benefit it says is it becomes difficult to be overcome by the mental afflictions, which we already talked about. Seventh one is you eventually accomplish all your temporary and ultimate goals. So it says, because you're constantly mindful, like I mentioned, you engage only in virtuous actions, and your collection of merit, your positive potential grows greater and greater. Right? One of the interesting things that happens, by the way, not just you become mindful, that one of the mental factors, there's the minds and all the different quality, mental factors are these things that accompany each mind, right? So when we're thinking, when pride, for example, is a mental factor, is a negative mental factor, or anger is a negative mental factor, right? So one of the mental factors is, there's one called shame, and the other one is called, and there's a subtle difference between them. But in any case, one thing that arises along with being mindful, right, of what we're doing, is one thinks, one has this kind of like thinking of shame. Now, shame as in like, I can't imagine I did that, or I'm thinking about it because what would my teacher say, right? It would be, he would be, very upset with me, whatever, right? Like that. Like, it's like when you're a child and you think, oh my God, I can't, but what is my parent going to say, like if I did that, right? Or whatever, right? That's one of the things that stops us from certain actions, right? When we're children. And the same way happens when one is following a teacher, right? Even if the mindfulness doesn't get you, like, there's another way you're making progress is these kind of things happen, right? You get these little inklings of, these little signs. So you can, like this kind of thing arises in your mind and, what would Jesus do? What would my guru do? Like that, So, yeah. So, or we think about, like, if if my teacher had the same situation arise, what would he do? Like, how would he react? Like, what would he do? You know, and then maybe I'll do that, right? So that's another way you think about it, right? And that's never going to be a negative. Again, if the teacher has a 10 quality, that's not going to be a negative thing. So you know, if you do what you think your teacher would have done, then it probably is an okay thing. And finally, the 8th benefit is you constantly work for the benefit of others, benefit of yourself and others. In this way, you complete the accumulations of merit and wisdom. And it says the merit you gain from virtuous activity toward one single teacher is equal to the merit of worshiping all the Buddhas. And then it has various sutras that it quotes where it says all this. So, and one of the ways that one transforms great negative merit is also through guru devotion. You know, I mean, the thing about devoting oneself to a teacher is that it not only creates great merit, it also purifies obstacles. And if you do find yourself, so here's like sometimes you realize, oh no, I did kind of think something negative about my teacher, right? What do I do, right? So one of the ways, you can purify that, of course, right? So we are human after all. Sometimes thoughts arise, or hopefully not deeds, but thoughts arise. And so, for example, you can make prostrations of 35 Buddhas, and specifically it says in there, it has a section in there about negative things I've done to the teacher, right? And Rinpoche actually has an additional thing to the 35 confession, for tantric, downfalls and tantric downfalls as well, right? So you can do those kind of things to purify any negative merit we've created to a teacher. So yeah. Anyway, I think that pretty much covers. I mean, there is a one section that the benefits of a teacher, and also the disadvantages of not relying on a teacher. But it's, for the most part, it's really just the opposite of of all the things we've talked about, all the benefits. So I'm not really going through it, but it's in the Lamrim. You can read it, if you're interested in the Liberation book. So yeah. Any other questions before we end the entire series? It was wonderful to have all of you. But well, you can reach me, you know where to reach me if you do have questions that arise later. And as I said, if there are questions that I can't, if there's some question that I can't answer, then certainly I would ask Geshe-la, or so yeah. Okay, so shall we end then? Let's do our dedication prayer. Come on, where'd it go? Oh, Adobe Acrobat, that's what I want. Share screen. Okay. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhichitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. His Holiness, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparable kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Osalhita, Venerable One, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us and intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, we make this request, O Lama, please, please live long. And finally, Geshe-la, beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the graduated path. You are the unequaled guide. Please live a long and stable life. And whoever other gurus we might have, we can dedicate, these long life prayers to them as well. So may they live long. May all their projects, succeed. May all their students make progress. And may we continue to meet them in all our future lives. Thank you very much.